So today I'm going to show you guys my design and illustration process within Procreate and how I turn something really rough into this design, which is sort of be my final piece. And I'm going to show you how I bring that into Adobe Illustrator and vectorize it. So without any further ado, let's hop onto the iPad and let's get started. So now we're on the iPad, I'm just going to talk over the playthrough within Procreate of how I started from the very first sketch. So as you can see, I initially sketched the idea on a piece of paper, just took a photo of it and brought it into Procreate. Now once I've traced over the sketch, I just went and placed down some guides just because I wanted the type to have an inclined look to it, and I wanted it to start with a sans serif feel, but add some custom flair to it as well. So this is where I'm really beefing up the type and adding the curves, which gives it some nice character. At this point, I'm happy with how the type looks. The letters started to look a little bit too wide, so I've condensed them a fair bit to my liking, but I'm still not 100% on the angle of the whole design, so I'll go in and warp it and make the incline steeper. Now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to lock it down with some more guides, which is going to allow me to add a final sketch layer. This is where I'm going over what I've got with a thin pencil, which will be a little bit tidier, and this is where I'm starting to really commit to how it is. So the final tweak I'm going to do is just to edit the exclamation mark. I wanted it to occur with the rest of the letters just so that it fits in with the overall design. And now that I'm happy with this as a final sketch, it's time to go and put down the line work. So I've set up the final artboard at 3000 by 3000 pixels, which I think is a pretty good size. It's not too big and it's not too small. It just depends on the project you're doing and if the artwork will go to print straight from Procreate. But this equates to 10 by 10 inches. Obviously I'm going to vectorize this, so it doesn't really matter just because I can export it straight from Illustrator at whatever size and it will retain its quality. So with this final artboard set up, I've just gone and copied and pasted the artwork from the previous board into this one. I've locked the layer and dropped the opacity. And now on a new layer, I've started to put down the line work using a brush I always use for lining any design that I create. It's essentially just a monoline brush, but it's got a nice textured edge to it which I really like. But if I'm not 100% happy with certain parts like the E and the exclamation mark still, I'll go in the warp tool again and widen the letters until I'm satisfied. So with all the lines down, I'm just going to fill the letters in with black, and rather than outlining these parts, I opted just to knock them out from the inside lines, which I kind of preferred. And just as a final touch, I went and rounded out any sharp corners. For some reason I just prefer to do this on most illustrations I make, just because I like the look of it. So now we've got Illustrator open, I'm just going to briefly show you how to turn this PNG image into a vector design. So I've just set up a 1000 by 1000 pixel artboard. If we want a different size when exporting it, then we can easily change that before we export it at the end. But because it's going to be vector, we don't need to worry about scaling the art and losing the quality. So let's go ahead and select the image, and in the properties panel to the right, we need to go ahead and select image trace. Now if you don't see the properties panel for whatever reason, you can click on the window tab at the top and click on properties towards the bottom. And we're going to go ahead and click image trace again and select the default option for now, because it's a simple image and there's no colours or complex textures, so Illustrator shouldn't have a problem with turning this into a vector preview for us. And Illustrator is going to use its magic and basically give me a preview of the vector itself. This looks pretty good, but I want to try and bring some of that rough texture back around the edges of the type from the brush that I used back in Procreate. And let's go ahead and click on this tab here and change some of the settings of the image trace itself. Now if your design already has colour and you want to keep it, you need to select the colour mode here. And the first thing I'm going to change is the threshold. So essentially anything to the left of the slider will show as black in the image, and anything to the right will remain white. Now, because I want these letters to be nice and chunky and fairly dense, I'll slide this to the right. But if you slide this all the way to the right, you'll just end up with a black square, which I don't want. Now with the path slider, I also like to bring this up because it's going to add more anchor points to the design, which is going to allow those rough edges to show a bit more. If you slide it down, it's going to smooth out the lines. And I'm going to bring the corners all the way down. It's not going to make a lot of difference to this design, so I'm basically just going to turn it off. And I'm going to do the same thing with the noise slider too. Now the last thing to do here is just to tick the ignore white box, as I don't need the white around the design, so it will get rid of it for me. So we're pretty much good to go. I'm going to click on expand, and there it is, my vector design. I can now edit this to my heart's content within Illustrator, including changing the colour if I want to, but I'm going to keep this simple and keep it black and white for now. And now we're going to make it into a sticker. So select all of the design and go to Object, Path and Offset Path. I'm going to keep the pixels at 20 and the joins at round because of the rounded corners, and then the mighty limit I'm going to keep at 4. I'm going to click OK, and now I have my outline. And now with everything selected, I need to go and ungroup everything. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and group the front design together and also the outline as well. I can't see anything right now because everything is black, so I'm going to change the outline to white, and now I'm going to make a square to cover the entire artboard and send that to the back. And just because I'm not too keen on it, I'm going to fill in this gap here on the design. I'm going to use the blob brush tool for this rather than just the normal brush tool. So essentially the blob brush tool is going to just be an outline of a shape when you brush it on. And if you select the outline and brush it on, as I'm going to do right now, it just becomes a part of the shape rather than you having to join the two shapes together. And there is my sticker design. Now the final thing to do is just to export this. As I said earlier about changing the artboard size, you can do this in the export settings if you want. You can also do it within the document itself before you save it out. So you want to go to File, Export and Save for Web, and you can change the dimensions of the file here in the image settings, and that's pretty much it. Alright, so now you know how to make a sticker within Illustrator. I'm going to show you how to do pretty much the same thing within Procreate as well. So there are two main methods to do this in Procreate, but I'm just going to show you the one that I use the most. I just think it's a bit more accurate and it's a bit more time saving as well. So before we do that though, I'm just going to add some halftone highlights just to finish the design off. So I'm going to fast forward that bit on the iPad, so I will see you back on there in just a sec. So I've just finished the design off using that halftone brush for the highlights, and now I'm going to make a white sticker outline for this design. So the first thing I need to do is just to duplicate this artwork layer. Now if I go into my layers tab, I've got the highlights and the base black design on two separate layers. So the thing to note here is that if you want to go back and edit this at any time, what you'll probably want to do is either you can group these two layers together and turn the layer off so you can't see it, or you can just create an entirely new artboard that's going to be like the final sticker artboard, and just bring in the merged layer into that and keep the grouped sort of non-merged layers on another artboard within Procreate. So once I've merged the two layers together and duplicated that single layer, I'm just going to turn off the background layer so I can see what I'm doing. And the next step is to activate Alpha Lock on the bottom layer. So you'll need to just tap on the layer that you want to do this on, and in this sort of section that pops up you want to click on Alpha Lock. This is so I can fill in the type with white, but if I try to do this without Alpha Lock it will just fill the whole artboard in, and I don't want that. So now that we've filled it in with white, we need to turn off Alpha Lock. To make the initial outline I'm going to click on the Adjustments tab up here and just choose Gaussian Blur. So at this point the amount of blur is up to you and how thick you want the outline to be. I want to cover all the letters, but I don't want it ridiculously big either. So about here looks pretty good. Now on the same layer, I'm going to tap the selection tool and then choose automatic from the tabs at the bottom. I'm just going to drag my pencil to the right, which is going to determine how thick the outline is going to be. And this is shown by the blue sort of outline that's appearing from underneath the design itself. Now there's two things to note here. So the larger you make the outline, the more pixelated and jagged the outline is going to be. If I drag my pencil too far, it will just fill the whole artboard. So I'm going to leave it around about here. And now I'm going to go over to my layers tab, tap on the layer and choose fill layer. And there you go, there's our sticker outline. And one last thing I'm going to do is just go around the outline with the monoline brush to smooth out those slightly pixelated lines. I'm just going to go fast forward this and I will see you when I've finished. And there is our final sticker design. So thank you for watching. If you've liked the video or learned something from it, then please consider subscribing to the channel. If you guys have got any suggestions for future content, then please let me know in the comment section below. And yeah, I will see you in a bit.